I just wanted to take the next few moments, probably about 15, 20 minutes, just to kind of share with you guys, if that's cool. Rodney talked about how I was a youth pastor for 11 years. Well, that was only like less than a month ago. And so, I'm just barely getting out of youth ministry. So I feel like I'm in a place right now where I can probably share some stuff with you that might be helpful. You know what I mean? So it's not like, I was a youth pastor for 11 years, 10 years ago. No, it was literally a few weeks ago. And so things are still fresh on my mind, surprisingly, except that Wednesday happens every week now because I forgot yesterday. But anyway, one area specifically that I want to talk to you guys about, just kind of give you guys a little practicum today, if that's okay, is the area of volunteers. Oh, yes, I heard that right there. Volunteers is like one of those things. Now, listen, with 20 minutes, I can't sit there and lay out a plan for you right now. But what I want to do today is kind of debunk some of the myths when you're creating a volunteer team. Because when I talk about these myths are the things that we say to ourselves, or the things that we've taught ourselves to think before we recruit somebody. And the one thing, this is probably be the number one, but I don't have it written down here because I literally just thought of it this morning. But I think the number one out of all of them is recruitment never stops. You will never, ever, ever stop recruiting. And I know there's a lot of youth pastors in here who can attest to that. It just never stops. The minute you think you have your perfect team, the minute you think you have it all together, you're going to have to recruit all over again. And so anyway, some of the things I want to give you guys to this. Number one, things that I don't want you to believe, okay? Number one, don't believe you have to find cool people. Don't believe you have to find cool people. I tell you, man, I used to believe that first coming in. You find those volunteers, you find those people in your church that you think, man, I bet students would love them. And if I could be completely honest, they were some of the worst volunteers I've ever had. They wouldn't show up. Some of them, when they did show up, you were like questioning, I'm like, is the devil wearing a coat in hell today? Because they showed up for church. It's really crazy. But you thought the coolest people were always going to make the greatest volunteers, but they're not. And I could think of one guy when we just left Lawton. He was a military guy. Lawton's a military town. We're right connected to Fort Sill, so we saw kind of a revolving door with volunteers and kids over the years. But this guy, his name was Ben, and Ben was probably one of the biggest nerds you've ever met, man. I'm telling you, just this real goofy, real cheesy, but the guy loves students. And he was one of those guys that would literally do anything that you would ask him to do. I'm talking, he lived all the way on Fort Sill and had to take a kid all the way to the west side of town, which is an opposite direction, and he would just do it with no questions asked. Oh, yeah, I got that. And then we had this mom there was nothing cool about her whatsoever, but she loved kids. And the crazy thing about it was she was kind of mean to the kids, but they still loved her anyway. She was a mom, and she treated those kids like they were her kids. But there's nothing cool about her. She didn't listen to all the latest music. She didn't know we had to sit there and had to teach her use Instagram and Facebook all the time. And probably to this day, she still doesn't understand it. But they don't always have to be cool people. It's always finding the people that just love kids. All right, number two, if they are interested, they will come talk to me. That is not true. If they are interested, they will come talk to me. We had a couple that helped us out in the youth ministry that we heard about this couple because they went through our membership Sunday, and everybody was telling us they were youth pastors in North Carolina. They did it for like 8 years. So I'm thinking, oh, these people are going to come talk to me. They're going to come find me. They never did. And so like every single week I would wait for these people to come talk to me. So finally I just you know what? They're not going to come look. They want to be asked. And that's what we have to understand. When we're looking for volunteers, when we're recruiting people, people want to be asked. And even the ones who are interested, they want to know that you want them a part of that. They want to know that you're going to come ask them and talk to them and take the time to build relationship with them and take the time to get to know them. I'm not saying it never happens. You do have that occasional person that says, man, I really would love to help out in youth. And you got to be leery of those people sometimes because they're crazy. But anyway, at least the ones we've ever dealt with. But, we've always saw that the ones, even if they are interested, they're not going to come talk to us. All right, number 3. I can't recruit or only recruit my friends. I think there's a line with those. Obviously, no one's going to come help you out in your area of ministry unless you have some sort of relationship with them. It's a rarity that you have people that will come to you and just, they say, I just want to help and that's it. No, they want to get to know you. They want to take the time to be around you. And so, but you can't only recruit your friends. But at the same time, there's also that belief where people say that, you just don't recruit your friends. Just don't get your friends involved, which I don't necessarily agree with. I've always kind of viewed it this way. There's a line with it. And I've made the mistake over the years of becoming too familiar with some of my volunteers. And there was a time where I had to come in and confront and correct the situation, and it made the friendship very, very awkward. And so I always kind of view things this way. Let people into your life. Let the volunteers into your life, but you got to put up a little window tint at times. Does that make sense? You got to put up a little bit of window tint. I mean, you want to let them in. You want them to see into your life, but you can't cross lines where you become too familiar. And so that's the one thing we always had to teach ourselves is don't get too familiar. Don't get to the point where, it's just like you've become too comfortable around these people. Because I can tell you about that situation where I had to confront and correct and tell him, hey, man, listen, I really need you not to do that anymore. We really need you to. And he kind of felt like, dude, I feel like you're talking to me like I'm one of the students. Well, you're acting like one of the students, so I have to talk to you this way. And it totally killed our relationship. And, he helped out for a little bit longer, but it was one of those things where, I realized, okay, I can still build relationship with these people. I can still have them in my home. I can still pour into them. I can still do everything I can to get to know them. But, there has to be a line where I don't get too familiar. Now, again, I have people that worked with us in Lawton in our youth ministry that some of my closest friends. But they understood where that line was. And I understood where that line was with them. And so that's why we're so close now. But still, you got to be careful with that. Don't always recruit your friends, but at the same time, don't believe the lie where you can't recruit your friends, because you can, but you have to know where that line is. All right, number 4. I need to recruit people who think like me. If all the people thought like me in my youth ministry, that would be a very, very poorly ran, unorganized youth ministry. I can tell you that right now. It'd be chaos every single week. I'm sure some of you it hasn't taken you long to figure out that Alicia's the one with the brains in this operation. And so with that, I would always try to find people who were smarter than me, who were different from me, who had different skill sets. Some people that, that they didn't want to be in front of the audience. They just wanted to be behind the scenes. Some people that wanted to be up front. I just found different people with different personalities, and I learned how to make those work. So don't always believe that I need to find people who are just like me, because it's going to be a very, very hard youth ministry to run if it is. Okay. Number 5. They don't care about the little things that I do. Don't believe that. Volunteers do care about the little things that you do. I can tell you to this day, thank you cards still work. Remembering their birthdays still works. Remembering their anniversary still works. All these one thing we did in Lawton all the time is we always had a team of dads that would help us out every single week. And, a lot of times their wives didn't help out. And so I remember, and I think Alicia was the one that had this idea, every single week we would have dads come and work safety team for all of our kids on Wednesday nights. So one night we decided, you know what? Why don't we send flowers to the wives that let us use their husbands? And that went over so well with all of our families. It just shows that you care. It's just little things like that show people that you care. Remembering their kids' birthdays, showing up for their kids' parties. I right before we left for Lawton, we went to one of our volunteers. They have a set of twins. It was like their third birthday. And I tell you that crowd we were around was a little awkward. There were some crazy things going on, so we kind of showed up to say, hey, we love you guys. Here's their present, but we're leaving, So, but it meant so much to them because it showed them that we cared. And another big thing that you may not feel like they need or they don't really care about, communication is so key. Keep your volunteers informed. You know, it's one of those things that I don't know if I've ever really, this is something we started doing just right before we left. We call it the weekly connection, where we do like a 10 or 15 minute meeting right before service. And then we do the monthly meeting where we talk about vision, things that are coming up, things that we need to do. And then we do a quarterly summit. And the quarterly summit is literally like a leaders retreat. And I know some of you are thinking, you know, maybe I don't have the funding to do things like that. We kept it very cheap and simple. A lot of times we would do those things up at the church, or we would do it at our house. And so a lot of times it was just hamburgers and hot dogs, something cheap. You know, so it doesn't have to be anything elaborate or crazy, but just when you're taking the time to communicate with them, keeping them informed, letting them know what's coming up means so much to them. They may not act like they care. They may not even look like they're paying attention, but they are. And so don't feel like the little things that you do, they don't care about. They do. All right, so number 6, they will volunteer for you for forever. That will not happen. I can guarantee you that right now. Again, dealing with Fort Sill and soldiers that helped us out in our youth ministry, it seemed like they would come in and out all the time. But I truly believe that God gives us certain volunteers for a certain season in youth ministry. Ben that I talked about, we only had Ben for about 5 months. And Ben got stationed in Colorado just not too long ago. But I tell you, the things that he did for our youth ministries in those 5 months, even though they went by so quickly, helped us out so stinking much. And the other thing is this. Guys, I don't know if you have some sort of contract that you have your volunteers sign. I don't know if we even have that available anymore, but we can get it to you if we can. But we have our volunteers sign a contract. And in that contract, one thing I've learned when it comes to volunteers and recruiting volunteers, they need a sunrise and they need a sunset. Gone are the days where you think, okay, I recruited this person to come help me out in youth ministry. They're going to stay with me till Jesus comes back. No, they're not. I can guarantee you that. And you got to watch certain situations like that, because if they're volunteering for too long and there's not a set date for them just to kind of have the option to take an exit, that's when they become bitter. And that's when things get out of control, and it goes even further south than you ever want it to go. Instead of them not helping out in youth ministry anymore, the situation's so awkward where they leave the church. And you don't want that to happen. And so we always set a sunrise and a sunset. Typically the way we did it is every 6 months we would go to that volunteer and we would say, hey, just so you know, the contract that you signed, the thing you said you're going to do, it ended this week. And hey, we totally understand if you feel like this is the time that you need to exit. And we get it. Hardly ever did we have people that exited, because we gave them the out. If they wanted to take that, they had that option. I think too many times volunteers today think that when they start helping you out in your prospective ministry, that they're just locked in for life. And that's not the case. They're not locked in for life. And so, but we have to give them that out whenever we can. And so always create a sunrise and a sunset. And also remember that that particular volunteer that may only helped you for about 5 or 6 months, man, they may have helped you through that season that you needed them the most. So always keep that in mind. So don't believe that they will volunteer for you for forever. Number 7. And this is the one that kind of people question when I talk about it, so it's fine if you do. It's only 1 day a week. They don't need a break. Volunteers need a break. Do you need a break from your job? Yes, volunteers need a break as well. One thing we started doing in Lawton a year ago, and I know some of you are going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but trust me, it worked, all right? And you can ask Alicia, I was sweating bullets every single week. But historically, the months in our service that were the lowest attended months were typically July and December. And so what we would do, and typically this only worked with the small group leaders, but we would do a small group leader break. We would take a break from our small groups and allow our leaders to take those months off just to be at home with their family, just to hang out and chill, not feel like they have to come to church. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking right now. If I do that, they're never going to come back. That's not true. They came back. Every single one of them did. And every single one of them came back excited. And so, I know what you're thinking too, like, well, what do you do when you don't? Now, you have those people in your ministry that you could tell them to take a break. It doesn't matter, rain, snow, sunshine, they're going to show up anyway. And so we had a few people that would just kind of step in. We also had our staff members that kind of helped us out during those weeks as well to kind of fill those gaps. But it was just kind of a stripped back service that we did. We didn't do small groups for the month, and it was just real low key. We'd only do a couple songs of worship. A lot of times only did one song of worship. We do a message. It was roughly about a 45 minute to an hour service, and that was it. But listen to me. Again, that break that we gave them, let them have the time to go be with their families. Let them have the time that if they wanted to take off and go on vacation, they didn't have to feel that obligation. Well, I told Heath that I'd be there. But some of the times, the greatest thing that you can give your volunteers is a break. And sometimes they need that break. In Lawton, I took over the youth ministry from a guy that was just absolutely killing it and did an amazing job. And, and some of you may have been in this scenario where you inherit those volunteers from a youth ministry that you took over. And as much as they say they're your volunteers, they're not really your volunteers. They're sold out to that guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But, I inherited those people. And there was a guy that was helping us in our youth ministry that would help in the guy before for 10 years while he was there. And he stayed on with me for another 6 years. And it was the most toxic situation ever because he just became so bitter. And I remember one night, there was one kid that just crossed him the wrong way, and he just made this big, huge scene and kicked him out of the church. And I told him right after that, I'm like, dude, we don't kick kids out, at least not unless I say so. And we did it behind closed doors, but he just didn't think it was right. That kid needs to be gone. And I told him, well, I understand where you're coming from, man. And I probably didn't handle it the right way. I have to admit that. But we're just not going to kick kids out. And he didn't take it that like it was the right thing to do. And so he just made this big, huge scene and stormed out of the building. People were watching. It's awkward. And but it was a learning lesson. Right then and there is when I realized, okay, I need to give volunteers a break every now and then. And we have to build, because they're the kind of people, they feel like sometimes they don't want to come to you and say that they need a break because they feel like they're going to be letting you down. So when you give them that break, it gives them that time to rejuvenate. It gives them that time to restore. And again, I know we live in different parts of the state, and that something like that may not work for you. And so maybe an entire month is just not reasonable. But I'm sure you can find somewhere a way to give your leaders a break so they come back more excited, more ready to work. That's the one thing I was sweating bullets every single week the first time we did this. I felt like the services were a failure every single week, but it was just different. The only thing where they were a failure, they were just different. And I thought that, they're never going to come back. They're never going to come back. Alicia was talking me off a clip every single week. They're going to come back. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. No, they're not. It's horrible. It's horrible. No, it's the worst. But they came back. And they came back stronger. And they came back missing the kids, which is crazy. But, they did. And they loved it. And so they look forward to that. But at the same time, they look forward to coming back. So the last thing is this. Number 8. They'll come to me if they need me. Keep tabs on your volunteers. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I'm a firm believer that when God brings somebody to my mind, I usually need to text that person or give them a call or just say something, hey, dude, are you doing okay? And 9 out of 10 times when I've done that with one of my volunteers, just keeping a tab on them, hey, man, how's your day going? They call me. Can you pray about this? Can you help me out with this? They're not going to come to you. Maybe some of your volunteers do, and that's great if they do, but the kind of people that I dealt with in my youth ministry, they were not going to come to me. Because a lot of the times the things that they need to come to you about, they're not going to come to you about because they're embarrassed or they're ashamed. But if you take that road and you take that door and you take the time just to throw out a little text message, how you doing? You'd be surprised about the responses that you get. So don't ever get into the mindset of thinking, if they really, really need me, they'll come to me. They won't. Some of them might, but the majority of them won't. And that's one thing that we dealt with in Lawton, but I'm so grateful to this day of the times that I took to help people out. If it's just something as simple as a text message or a phone call, it meant the world to them. And again, it goes back to the little, they don't like the little things. They do. It means the most to them. They may never, ever admit it, but it means the most of them. So guys, today, again, anything that Alicia and I can do to help you guys out in youth ministry, again, we're just excited to take on this role as the new DYDs. For us, I tell you, the most exciting thing about taking this job was like, man, I get to hang out and spend time with youth pastors, guys that I was youth pastors with for 11 years, and watch you guys do your thing. And so if there's anything that my wife and us as a district, we can help you guys with, please, please, please don't feel like you're ever bothering us. Don't feel like you can't come to us, because you can. We're here for you guys. We're here to help you guys in any way that we can. We're excited, again, about this new season coming up. Man, it's going to be a great time. I still believe that the greatest days of OIM are ahead of us. And so, again, thank you guys for letting me have this time.